Welcome back to Final Fantasy V. Last time, we got the gang together, and now, we have a pirate crew, and they're going to sail us right to where we need to go. There's not much for us to really explore in the initial ocean area. If you sail around without getting help to the Wind Shrine, you'll quickly find that, there's no actual way out of this area. There is one town we can go to, and a canal that has a locked door, so this is our only destination. So here's Faris' stats since she joined late. Didn't actually get to see her in action before. But, you know, she more or less works the same as everybody else right now. We're all freelancers. We don't have solid work. So, let's head on into the Wind Shrine. Have Faris take the lead. And a whole lot of people are panicking over here. What's going on? Princess Lena! Oh shit, I said that in front of a pirate. Oh no, it's fine. I did that earlier. He knows. He's cool. I'm sure the king's probably fine. He had a cool dragon with him. You can't beat a cool dragon. It's just math. Alright, so, potential dad in danger. So, got a reason to go up and check on the wind crystal, other than the fact that the winds are kinda stopping. They're not working super well anymore. Yep. One problem with this game, it is sometimes very difficult to talk to people if they are running back and forth in a panic.
Moving NPCs in JRPGs tend to just be irritating.
Alright, we've got some healing water right here, so we can just drink that. Doesn't have limited uses, we can just come back here whenever we need to heal. The nice thing about Final Fantasy V, though, is that if you push into NPCs, they will move out of the way for you. So they can't really stick you in a corner or anything. They can't just trap you if you accidentally just get stuck somewhere. Alright, so enemies here are going to be very simple, though it is worth noting certain abilities they might be using if they get long enough to use them. They didn't, they died immediately. Having a party of 4 makes things go by very quickly. Oh, we got a mid-dungeon save point. So, consecrated circles allow you to just use tents or save the game, so basically, it is the same as being outside, but in a dungeon. Faris is currently in the lead, so you get the leather cap. The hat goes to the pirate. Sorry, Bartz. Alright, so Wind Shrine is incredibly simple as far as dungeons go. Ooh, we got a bunch of guys here, though. So, the Mani Wizard is probably the most dangerous enemy here. Goblin Punch. So Goblin Punch does more damage if you and the enemy are the same level. Want the magic stick, apparently. So, if you are ever the same level as a goblin, which is kinda hard to do, and they use Goblin Punch, it'll hurt a lot. Otherwise, it's just a normal damage dealing move. The Mani Wizard is able to use basic spells, so, you know, your fire, your blizzard, your thunder. I think they typically stick to Blizzard, or at least that's what I remember them using most of the time. But yeah, low-level spells, so kinda tough for this point in the game. But not like immediately lethal or anything. Just notable. Ooh, broadsword, hell yeah. Alright, well, Lena, remove that staff, you don't need that, take a sword instead. give Lena a sword.
You can use a stick, you can use a sword.
Look, if you bopped enemies with the stick, then it's fine. This'll do that, but better. It was already incoming, Bartz, you're a little late there. Okay, so, Wing Raptor. So Wing Raptor will use Breath Wing, which damages everyone a little bit. Definitely a dangerous move. And like many a first boss in a Final Fantasy game, Wing Raptor here is here to teach you about the ATB system. So you know how sometimes you just move and the enemy does stuff? It's not just turn-based. Well, sometimes, which should be happening soon. Surely I will not beat this bird. Okay, I did beat the bird to death before he did his whole ass gimmick. So if he folds his wings over, he will stop attacking. However, if you hit him, he'll use claw on you. But like, apparently a party of 4 is just the most powerful thing we could have, so we just bludgeoned a bird until it died.
Now you'll never learn your lesson about the ATB system.
I will just attack relentlessly for the rest of the game. There's no punishment for anything.
I think of 2 observations about fights like that. So the surface level take that I used to agree with was, it's weird that they have you fight a boss like that, since that's usually the only enemy that fights like that in any given game. Like, we're not going to fight very many enemies that go into states where you're not allowed to attack them, or else they'll do a super move that fucks you over. Then I read Christine Love's post, who said that it's there to get you out of the feeling that you feel like you have to attack constantly, or else you'll be screwed over by the ATB system. It's there to teach you, no, it's okay to just stop and think. In fact, here, we're going to force you to stop and think.
Yep. This is just good design.
Yeah, that's the difference between somebody who knows what they're talking about and someone who thinks they know what they're talking about.
Alright, so with that, Crystal kinda broke. That's bad. There's a missing dad. Also bad. However, the crystals are giving us their power. We already passed by Ferris, who is fire. We just got to Lena, who is water. Looking at this random town over here. We've got the yellow tinted crystal. That means it's Earth. And considering who's left, not a huge surprise that it goes to Galuf. Because, of course, here we have the Wind Crystal, which represents Bartz. I mean, I feel like that one's kind of a gimme, it's his thing. Now, there are some very minor gameplay elements to what characters correspond to which crystals, but you're not really going to run into much, especially early on. So mostly, it's just here to establish character. Now, what tarot are these characters?
Let's get the easy one out of the way. Bartz is the fool. It's not because he's stupid, it's because he's going on a journey and has a lot of potential.
Protect them, unlike this one, which is extremely broken. We are not getting the wind back, ooh boy. Hope you didn't like the gentle breeze on your skin, anyway. Dad image, away!
Hope you don't have stock in any windmill companies.
Elsewhere, Don Quixote is pumping his fist. Sorry about your dad, Lena. But hey, good news. Crystals. The Wind Crystal may have shattered, however, it's not just giving Bartz its blessing. It's also giving us our jobs. So, here's our first difference for the custom classes hack. So, we learned Knight, Thief, Dragoon, Blue Mage, and White Mage, Black Mage, Time Mage, Summoner, and a couple more for the road, Dancer and Bard. So that's a different, like not completely different from what you would get in the base game, but there are some odd cards out. There's some that we normally get later on that we're getting early. Talk about that in a sec, but first, Lena's gotta, bow her head, think about her dad. Alright, Dad pondered. Let's go. Alright, so, like I said, Wind Shrine. Extremely simple dungeon. They are not all going to be this simple, but game kind of wanted us to rush to the jobs. Speaking of which, this is where you get the job tutorial. Now, we're just gonna kind of shove this off into a corner, because the tutorial is pretty slow and very basic. So, I'm going to mention the differences for the custom classes hack that I'm using. One of the more important things about the job system that, isn't probably immediately obvious from just flipping through menus, is that when you take a job, you will always have the attack and item commands. Each job also typically has its own unique command, and that is the third slot. Therefore, you get one slot to equip things from other jobs, because you see, as you gain experience in one job, you learn its abilities, you can take it to another one. The Freelancer job and one other in the game is a little unique in that in the base game, they can take two other job things, whether they be abilities or commands. The thing that drew me to the custom classes hack is that your overall set of abilities is actually completely changeable. So that means attack and items are not entirely necessary. If you don't want to take those in, you don't have to. Instead, you have the opportunity to have 3 different commands, or abilities, whichever you want. You can, of course, accidentally shoot yourself in the foot if you don't set yourself up correctly and, leave something crucial behind. The other good thing is that each job does have its own sort of built-in thing, like it normally does, but you will always have that. So, for example, Black Mage will always have Black Magic, as long as you are in that class. One thing that does kind of drive me mad about this hack, though, is that it's always at the top, and I don't like that. I want attack to be on the top. I'm sorry. Magic should be under that. But no, I looked at this hack and thought, dang, that's pretty cool. I like the sound of being able to just kind of do whatever at the expense of maybe getting rid of items when you might need them. You do have to be aware of what you're doing, but as long as you do remain aware, you should be fine, and you have a lot more options. And quite frankly, I feel like not playing Final Fantasy V normally is just a tradition at this point. We have a whole event every summer about doing that, so I don't think anyone's gonna be too mad about that, right? We know what normal Final Fantasy V looks like.
I feel like this hack might make mages a lot easier to break. I'm thinking about a particular skill, and that skill was powerful enough when you were a little limited in the spells that you could choose.
I know exactly the one you're talking about. You still kind of have to sacrifice a lot for that, depending on your setup, but we'll get into that later. Alright, now I can actually shove this over, so that we can start talking about the classes. Starting with, Freelancer's our first class, but we're not going to be talking much about Freelancer now, because why would you ever start with Freelancer? We had to have this job immediately at the start of the game because we had nothing else available, and now we have all these shiny new jobs to get to, so obviously you're going to want to go to those first. Now that being said, you shouldn't write Freelancer off entirely. However, they're actually endgame material. Your focus for most of the game is going to be on the jobs you get from the crystals, but gaining abilities and commands with them, as well as a few other things through mastering those jobs, is the key to making Freelancer extremely good. Now, will you be ending the game with them? I'm going to say yes, but there's kind of an asterisk there. We're too early on for me to really have any context available for what that means, so I guess for the time being, we're just going to leave this off with, yeah, Freelancers. there for later. So how I'm gonna do this is I will give the base game's jobs first and foremost. The base game starts you off with Knight, Monk, Thief, White Mage, Black Mage, and Blue Mage. With the exception of Blue Mage, all of those were classes that you got in Final Fantasy I. It's just, your starting classes in that game. Well, your only classes that could be upgraded, but you get the point. To be fair, they are very good starting classes, so it's no real surprise. Final Fantasy III also started you with those. Knight is a pretty good physical attacker, but it also brings a bunch of defensive options to the table as well. They've got good options, they've also got the cover command, which just means that they can take hits for weakened allies, and they're just also very good at swords. If you want to stab things very good, go for Knight. Next off, the one that got cut from our initial set of jobs in this hack, Monk. Monk is kinda like Knight, but instead of defense, it gets punch. So much punch. If you want to do physical damage, like more so than Knights, Monk is a pretty good option. Of course, their whole thing is that the less they have on, the better. You're going to just be attacking barehanded if you want to go with Monk, and you will just kind of go wild, because you score a bunch of hits, and also, Monk just gets the counter ability as well, so if somebody hits you, you punch them back.
Yeah, Monk is pretty good.
It's probably one of my favorites, which again is why I wish it were here, but we'll have to wait. Next off is Thief. Thief, of course, is the fast class. Not exactly damaging. They're mostly here for their just weird utilities. They can steal things in battle to get certain items. This is something you're going to want later in the game, but for the most part, things don't really have that many good things to steal. You also get other abilities such as Flee, which makes it easier to run from battle, Find Passages, which helps you find hidden passages. You probably noticed at one point, Ferris just entering the void to get a treasure chest. Yeah, Thief helps you with that. It also helps prevent back attacks from enemies, so you die a little less, helps you get preemptive strikes. It's just all in all very good. Good for its utilities, has a bunch of things you can put on other classes who maybe aren't so physically not good. Next off, you have the White Mage. Obviously, you had your mages here. You could have cut them from being the first set of classes in the game, but that would be bad, because White Mages are here to heal. If you need something to keep you alive, White Mage is your job. It gets other utilities, of course, just like curing poisons, curing, various status effects, that sort of thing. You've got a decent set of options. Obviously, you're not going to hit very hard with them, but you're mostly here for medical stuff.
Yeah, imagine making an RPG group that doesn't have a healer in it. What kind of morons would do something like that?
Look, I shoot things very hard, very well. Nobody can complain about me hitting things between the eyes. I mean, maybe you have to complain with almost dying and all, but I'm doing fine. Anyway, speaking of dying, Black Mages are kinda like White Mages, except instead of healing your party, they just kill things with dark magic. So you got your elemental spells, and you've got a whole lot of other stuff to learn at later levels. Also on a note, the White and Black Mage class skills that you unlock as you level them up aren't the most, they won't wow you, because it's just unlocking each level of magic you can do. It's important, but, not terribly exciting. And then you get to the end, and you get either MP plus 10% from White Mage, or MP plus 30% from Black Mage, and it's like, alright, well, now I have all the spells in the game, and I can kind of just roast anything, or heal very well, either which way. And lastly, from the base classes, we have the Blue Mage. So, what kind of spells do they do? Well, they're not like White Mages or Black Mages. You won't be buying their spells from stores or anything. Instead, you're going to be injured by enemies all over the world. That's right, Blue Mages learn enemy skills. Hey, remember when I mentioned Goblin Punch? The reason I made note of that one is because you can learn Goblin Punch, and it's potentially more useful in your hands than theirs. Blue Mages are very interesting. and they're kind of middle of the road stat-wise overall. They're not terrible in a fight, but you are mostly just here for the ability to learn how to destroy everything else by getting your own ass kicked.
Blue Mages are great in Final Fantasy because they will either be the strongest class or the weakest class, and there's never an in-between. But because I play Final Fantasy V first, I respect Blue Mages and will always get all the blue magic.
Yeah, they're a very fun class to play around with for the most part. Admittedly, getting a few of the spells is a little anxiety-inducing, but all of that is early game, so we can get some of the tougher ones out of the way. Not soon, but like a few episodes from now. So, with that, we now move on to the classes that the hack introduces. I think it's interesting that they mix things up. I respect that, but for the most part, let's get the kind of useless classes out of the way first. So, Time Mage, very potentially good type of mage class. They learn time-specific spells, which is sometimes a category in these games, sometimes it isn't, and they're just kind of blended into the other spell lists. Here, though, they learn stuff like slow, or stop, or even regen. Very useful spells that can help fill things out. One potential problem: we don't have access to time magic yet, so time mages are kind of just there for a little bit. The same thing goes for the summoner class, which, as the name implies, it summons specific foes. Or, well, sometimes they'll be foes and then you make them friends and then they attack your foes. Regardless, they're very strong. But again, we don't really have access to any summons yet, because you usually unlock this later, and then you get a bunch of summoned monsters afterwards. So we don't have variety for Summoner yet either. When you do get summons, oh boy, Summoner's very good. It's kinda just like using black magic, but more so. And lastly, there's also the Bard, which sings songs, and once again, normally you get this later, so there's not really anything we can do with a Bard. I don't even think we really run into harps for a bit, so like, what do you do for attacking with a Bard? Now for the actually useful classes, first off we have Dragoon. So, okay, Dragoons are pretty strong, they can equip lances, which are, fairly good weapons. A little less frequently found so far than the swords, but not impossible. And they also have access to the Jump command, which is one that just throws the Dragoon high into the air. They will be out of battle for a moment, and when they come back down, they do a lot of damage to their target. Very useful, though potentially dangerous, considering you are removing a character from the fight, and that means 3/4 of your characters are now vulnerable. So if they were pulling heavy lifting on taking damage, well, now monsters have more of a free pickings on other of your allies. Not a huge deal if you have a white mage that isn't killed in the ensuing onslaught, but still, it's something that you might want to keep in mind. And lastly, the Dancer, which is not held back by the need to get specific spells. This one's kind of weird. It's definitely an attacker and not a support. It has some interesting weapon choices, nothing too impressive, and some not great stats for the front row. However, they do get the Dance command, which basically just does a random effect. You have no control over what the Dancer does, but it usually helps a lot. There are exceptions, and we will be running into them soon, but Dancer is still more useful than Time Mage, Summoner, or Bard at this point. It is also worth noting that they don't have a lot of things to learn either. It's also good to note now that just because a class only has like 3 level ups before they're maxed out instead of like 7, sometimes a character needs a lot of ABP in order to level up to a certain job level. That's not really a big deal with a Dancer, but I'm thinking about another job, perhaps the same job mentioned earlier, with a very broken ability that might take a while to get, so keep that one in mind. And that's it for all of the classes. So, next time on Final Fantasy V, we'll actually be able to take these things out for a spin, and no longer will we be freelancers as we try to figure out what the heck we're supposed to do to find the next crystal.